Colleagues, we're just waiting for maybe 1 more minute and then I will start. I will be taking the floor first. Okay. Okay, so I think that we can start and then more people will be joining maybe in a little bit. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eva Baños de Guisasola, and I'm a senior advisor at Platforma. We also work for CMR, the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, and this training academy is also co-hosted by UCLG, the United Cities for Local Governments. This is the third session of the training academy. We had one session yesterday. We also had a policy debate this morning on adaptation, and this is the third block of this training academy. So I also thank all those participants who already started joining yesterday, because we know that it's been a very packed program, but we thank you for your interest and also your wish to learn more about the topic of our academy, which is co-creation, climate and co-creation, climate action, justice-centered leadership for local and regional governments. So I'm going to be the moderator for today, but I wanted to give you some in-house keeping rules. So the first one is that this meeting is being recorded, so you know it. There will be a short report with all the presentations and the recordings of the sessions to be circulated after the end of the academy, so hopefully in the next days. We'll also be distributing an evaluation form which will help us improve for the next academies, because we usually do these academies around March every year. And also in this evaluation form, we ask for input for topics to deal in the next academy, so your insight would be very useful. We will also be monitoring the chat in case you have any questions. So my colleague Juanca from USLG will be taking a look at that. So please do pose your questions. There will be 2 moments for questions after the keynote presenter and also at the end of the rest of the speakers. And then we will also be doing a Mentimeter, so prepare your phones for this. We'll have a couple of questions at the beginning to know where you come from and your background. And then once the keynote speaker starts, we'll have 1 question linked to the topic and 2 more questions at the end of his speech. So that would also help him to discuss with the audience. So prepare your phones. And then we will also be taking a picture after Mark's presentation, so after the keynote. But I will be telling you when to put your cameras on and give us your big smile. Okay, so without further ado, then I'll give the floor to Pablo Fernandez Marmisol. And he is also working for UCLG, and he's the Assistant Secretary General for Partnership. And he will be giving us some insight on this day too, because day 1 was more focused on local practices and the local vision. And today's block is going to be dedicated more to the same topic, but from a more global and international perspective. So Pablo, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
We cannot hear you yet.
You can't hear me?
Not yet.
You can?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, colleagues. On behalf of United Cities and Local Governments, on behalf of the CMR and Platforma, we would really like to welcome you.
Eva, I think it might be your computer because we can hear him.
Okay, now, okay, now, yeah.
Okay, so we would like to welcome you to this academy, which makes total sense to keep learning together, to be part of the UCLG learning strategy and module, and to link it with our climate agenda, which, as Eva was referring, it is linked to what we do globally. And it is a political statement that we keep working globally in the times that are happening, and the political agenda that we are. From the global municipal movement, we understand co-creation as one of our commons. And we also understand the responsibility that we have towards the climate agenda as one of the global commons. As you know, we understand the commons not only as resources, actually not as resources, but not only of those things that we need to protect, but as well of the processes that lead us and the ones that we learn from to find common solutions. And that's what we understand from co-creation, and that's the link that this academy has with our global processes and the global social contract that we are trying to bring about for the post-2030 agenda. Citizen engagement, it is the way that we are trying to build democracy. And it is only through citizen engagement that climate action will not only be a solution, but a new way of living on our planet. And this is why we are trying to bring as much as we can the issue of democracy to the way that we tackle every single aspect on climate action. The responsibility that we need to take for current generations and for the future. And the second axis of gender equality, the municipal movement backbone, it is the feminist declaration that we had in terms of assuming our movement as a feminist municipal movement. There is no single step that our constituency will be done without taking the gender perspective and the gender equality agenda, but as well assuming that everything that we do, not only in terms of gender, has a feminist approach. On youth adaptation, it is one of the axes, and with the recent guidelines of youth participation from the United Nations, we are trying to identify as much as we can to change the way we do things, to accept that we have a failure in youth engagement, and to understand youth participation diverse, not as a unified way of participating. So youth adaptation needs to be diverse as much as possible, and that we represent and we understand this constituency as political present actors. It's not that we are trying to solve the world for the youth, but accepting that the youth is living in these conditions and that they do have to have a political agency, diversity, and full responsibility in the ways that we are tackling. And finally, on city diplomacy, because city diplomacy tends to be, in some spaces, as an old-fashioned way of going about our constituency. And we cannot avoid to talk about the current geopolitical tensions, war, invasions, and things that are happening. And city diplomacy is a way that we prove that union and the way that we are united in united cities and local governments through city diplomacy is not thinking that there is absence of conflict. It's actually acknowledging that we have conflict, that climate is a matter of conflict, but that the union is a democratic response to this conflict, that we are democratically taking responsibility, that we have problems to solve all together. And learning together is a way of tackling this union. The academy is a multilateral strategy. What we are doing together is a multilateral strategy. So once we hear that the multilateral system is in crisis, we tend to respond that there is one multilateral system that is in crisis, but there are many others that are not in crisis. And this way of learning together is a way of proving that our actions are dedicated to working together, to accepting our diversity, and to finding a solution to the things that we have been doing. So thank you very much. We will try to connect as much the outcomes, what you presented and what we have learned together to the local social covenant that will be delivered in Tangier, that it's a platform with whom we will be working with civil society, local and regional governments, our international stakeholders, to build together our common position for the post-2030 agenda, that in the end will be our common position for the multilateral system, which is nothing else but our public common good that has the objective to remain in a peaceful world with solidarity and subsidiarity in the front. I would leave it here, Eva. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and looking forward for today's program.
Okay, thank you very much, Pablo. Muchas gracias. And as you said, yes, indeed, we are talking today in a more global context, in a more international context. Of course, we need to also discuss on the local context, but the relevance today is also crucial because, as you mentioned, we have to frame this in the post-2030 discussion. So we are starting globally to tackle this and to see what is going to be our positioning, because, as you know, the 2030 agenda is in very, I mean, in a few years, basically. So we need to be prepared for this. So in the exercise that we've been doing with our members, and you know this very well, Pablo, we've been asking our members what they needed to really accelerate this agenda. And one of the first responses was, we need capacity building, we need learning, we need to learn from each other, we need to learn from other continents. So this is an academy that is also responding to this request from members on what they need to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And also another relevant element is that this year, the Sustainable Development Goal on cities, number 11, is under review. So that's why all the information that we will gather in this academy will also be transferred to the negotiators during the high-level political forum, where the SDGs are assessed and reviewed. So thank you very much for this, Pablo. Then I will, because I see that now that we are more or less all the participants we were expecting, what we are going to do, Juanca, if you agree, we're going to launch the Mentimeter to see where we are from and what is our background. And then I will run you through the agenda, so you have a general knowledge of what we are going to be tackling. So please access the Mentimeter. You can either do this with your phone or with your computers. And now we're going to be asking 2 questions on your background and the geographical scope, so we know who is online. So please download it. And then also the results of the Mentimeter will be included in the report, so you know it. So Juanca, you're launching the question. And yesterday we also saw that most of the participants were from the European continent, but this is a training that is, even if we're talking a lot about Europe, but it's also, you know, addressing some of the global aspects. And we're also including some examples and best practices from other continents. So we see it's more diverse today. Mm-hmm. So you tell us, Juanca, when we move to the next one. Okay. And this is your background. Okay. So that gives us an idea, I think, that we have more or less. Oh, okay. It's moving. Okay, so I think we have a good understanding of where we're from, but so it's basically local, regional governments and city networks, most of the participants, but it's still very diverse. So it's good. So this is also very positive because these training academies are targeting the local leaders, but also the experts and also citizens. And so whomever wants to benefit from the knowledge, you're more than welcome. So it's very good. Okay.
Thank you very much, Eva. I'm going to take it off, but remember that we're going back to the same Mentimeter afterwards.
Okay. So now I'm going to explain you the agenda for today. It's going to be, now we're going to kick off with the keynote from Mark McCarthy, and he's a consultant from United Nations University, a research fellow, and he's going to be talking about advancing climate justice in the global transition. Then we're going to be presenting case studies from different parts of the world. So first we're going to start with an example on the centralized cooperation actions between the city of Cologne and also a community in Peru. And they're going to be talking about this partnership that was born a few years ago, and it's tackling climate adaptation and also city engagement. And then we will have the presentation by two colleagues in the French Guyana, and then they will also be presenting an example on the centralized cooperation focusing on community-based resource management. Then we will also have a presentation from one of platform members, the province of Barcelona. They're also working on international cooperation. I have also projects on international dimension focusing on waste and on gender aspects and awareness raising and education. Then we will have a member of the constituency of women before the Framework Convention on Climate, and she will be presenting the involvement of this constituency in the whole COP process. And then we will have a final presentation on youth aspects by one of our colleagues from the city of Athens, from the municipality, and he will be presenting the Athens climate contract on youth. So I will start now with the presentation of Mark, and just be aware that there will be 2 Mentimeter questions during his presentation. We'll let you know when you need to reconnect. And after his presentation, we'll be taking the group picture, so you know the plan for this. So Mark, you have the floor for about 15 minutes. So you know it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Eva, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are connecting from. Can you see my screen? All right. Okay. So thank you again. And as Eva did mention, my name is Mark Akrofi, and I am currently a research fellow at the African Institute for Sustainable Energy and Systems Analysis. It's based in Senegal, but I'm in Ghana at the moment. And I also work as a consultant at the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, which is in Japan, where I also spent the last 5 years as a PhD student and a postdoc. So I'll be speaking today on advancing climate justice in the global climate transition. And I would like to say a very big thank you again to Platforma. This is my second time. 2 years ago, I participated in the workshop as a trainer. And then this year, I got a chance to come back and give this keynote presentation. So thank you, Eva. Thank you, John, for helping out, and also to Francesco. I think he couldn't join today. So my presentation is structured in 3 parts. In the first part, I'll talk about the current state of the climate, looking at what the IPCC reports, particularly AR6, says about which direction we are headed in terms of progress in climate action. And then I'll also talk about the issue of justice in climate transformations, looking at how this plays out around the globe. And the last part will be a call to action as to what are the policy implications, which I think is particularly important given the fact that a lot of people in the audience are working in the local governance arena. So I'll begin my presentation with this quote from the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who says that we are in the fight of our lives and we are losing. Greenhouse gas emissions keep growing, global temperatures keep rising, and our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. So the pictures that we are seeing in this slide, unfortunately, have become annual occurrences. Every year we see this in our cities, from floods to the devastating impacts of hurricanes and cyclones to droughts and wildfires. So much so that now every year there are photo contests that give prizes to photographers that are able to capture the most devastating impacts of climate change. And the sad thing is that these photos keep getting better each year, which means the climate impacts are getting worse. Now, the AR6 assessment report by the IPCC shows the projections and then the risks in terms of the likelihood of the impacts that we'll experience as a result of an increment in global warming. So the left panel shows the projections based on data from 1850 to 1900. But what I would like to highlight here is the area that I've circled in red, which shows the temperature between 2011 to 2020, which was around just 1.1 degree warmer. And the panel on the right shows the impact in terms of the level of severity. So darker shadings means much more impacts, and these are categorized in terms of extreme weather events, in terms of distribution, in terms of the global aggregate, impacts. So what I would like to show here is even at 1.1 degree warmer, you can see that the impacts are shaded between the yellow, red, and then the purple zones, which means these are already moderate to very high impacts, even at just 1.1 degrees warmer. So you can imagine what will happen if these temperatures rise to 2 degrees, which is where we are currently heading if we don't double our actions in tackling climate change. Now, this graph also shows that the window of opportunity to tackle these climate issues is narrowing with every delay that we take as far as this climate action is concerned. So the two panels, the first on the right, the line in green shows the path that we are supposed to be walking, which is limiting the global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But the most important thing that I would like to highlight here is a panel on the left, which is which conditions enable or constrain collective or individual actions towards addressing climate change. And when you look at the left, the lower left bottom of that panel, you realize that on top of the list of factors that constrain climate action, both individual and collectively, is the issue of poverty, inequality or inequity, and injustice. So these are not just ordinary, problems or challenges. They are more structural in the sense that they are deeply embedded in how our societies, are designed and how our societies function. So they shape who has access to resources, who has access to power, and who has access to opportunities to be able to, address climate impacts. And this is why today's conversation is very important, because we are talking about climate justice. But then this term, we hear of it a lot, is quite contentious to define, I would say, and can mean different things to different people. But without a common understanding of the problem, then we cannot have, an understanding on the solutions as well. So at this point, I would like to just get your views in one word. What does climate justice mean to you? Or what does justice in the context of climate change mean to you? So that hopefully we can come to some collective understanding that will shape our discussions going forward. So I will call into Juan, if you can pull up the Mentimeter. Do you have the responses?
Colleagues are still responding.
Okay.
So maybe give us 30 more seconds, Mark.
No problem.
But we see that equity is the winner. The winner.
Can we put that on the screen for a second?
Okay.
Just so everybody can have a view of it.
Because we see it in, at least my colleagues and myself, we see it on the screen.
Oh, okay. Does everybody else see it? I cannot see it.
Yeah, maybe because you're sharing. I mean, you're using the screen for your slides, so that's not.
Oh,
but
okay.
then see equity as the first word in big, and then responsibility as the second one, and recognition, equality, and inclusion. Those are the 5 main ones. So equality, responsibility, recognition, equality, and inclusion.
All right.
Equity is the first one, big one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So can I reshare now my screen? Can you see my screen?
We see you. I see you.
I think someone else is sharing.
You should be able to now that I stopped sharing the
Okay,
Mentimeter.
all right.
Yeah, nice back.
So thank you very much for that equity, responsibility, inclusion. What's the other two? Sorry, Eva. But that's okay. So I have a few questions here to guide our understanding of climate justice. And basically, the question of climate justice or the issue of justice in climate change mitigation and adaptation looks at who contributed the most to climate change, who suffers the most from its impacts, who benefits from climate solutions, and who participates in decision making. And I think these questions revolve around the keywords that you all type in. So we will look at how these questions, play out in the climate space across the world. And the first thing, which is the most dominant one that you probably hear of a lot, is the climate inequality paradox, where countries that have contributed the least to climate change are the ones that are suffering the most from its impacts. So the map on the left shows cumulative carbon emissions by country. And more generally, you can see that countries in the global south, in Africa, you see in Southern America, and in Southeast Asia, these are shaded in much lighter colors, which means that their emissions are lower as compared to the global north countries. So these are also countries in the global south that are less equipped. They have fewer resources, technology, and the capacity to be able to adequately, respond to climate impacts. And then the graph on the right now shows how these emissions are distributed by different income groups. And here we see that the richest 10% people in the world are responsible for 50%. That's half of the total global emissions, as compared to the bottom 50%, who are the poorest. And this group of people emit just 8% of the global emissions. So we are currently about 8 billion people on the planet, and just 10% out of these 8 billion are emitting as much as, for the 4 billion people who are emitting just a fraction as compared to what these richest people are doing. So there is that imbalance between who is, contributing and who is suffering. And this is one of the key issues as far as climate justice is concerned, especially on the global stage. The second issue has to do with intergenerational justice. And in the opening, a lot was said about involving youth and why they should take central stage in climate action. So again, this is a graph from the IPCC's sixth assessment report, and it's showing how climate change will impact different people based on which year they were born. So compared to someone that was born in 1950, a child that is born in 2020 is way more likely and likely to experience extreme climate, impacts. So in 2023, on the International Youth Day, for example, UNDESA released this youth report on climate, and it shows that a child born in 2020 as compared to someone in 1950 is as high as 7 times more likely to experience a heat wave, about 3 times more likely to experience flood and crop failures, and 2 times more likely to experience wildfires. So the actions that we take today are not just for the present, but we owe that responsibility to the future generations. And globally, we have about 1.8 billion young people. So those that are going to live with the impacts for climate change longer are also those that have the least power to address it, because we said this so many times that the youth are not adequately involved, in these climate decisions and climate negotiations. So this is one other strand of how this climate issue or the justice issue in climate, plays out. Now, justice or climate injustice is not only a global issue, it also occurs within countries and locally. So the impacts of climate change are not evenly distributed. Within countries, we have different groups of people. So people who are living in low-income neighborhoods, people who are living in, poorly planned areas. We have low-income households, people who are living in rural areas. And you can see from the pictures, if you live in a neighborhood that is not very resilient, when you have a hurricane, when you have a cyclone, people lose their homes. And also heat waves that have now become global occurrence. And I think a lot of them happen in Europe nowadays. Almost every summer, there are heat waves. So this is also a huge thing when you look at in terms of who is better able to cope. Do they have the means to be able to cope with, cooling demands, or even investing in additional backup systems in case there are power issues? So in 2021, for example, in Texas, they had this winter storm, which sort of just froze their electricity grid, and a lot of people, homes, they lost power. So research later shows that wealthier households that were able to invest, in backup heating systems were able to maintain an adequate level of heating, but the poorer households were not able to do that. So this is like another dimension between different groups of people. And in terms of governance, we have climate governance at the global level, you have it at maybe regional, and then you go to national, and then you have the local level, which I consider to be the most important, because local governments are the one that actually drive action or translate these policies into action. But the level of authority among these levels, especially between national and local governments, is not the same. So you can have a very proactive local government. You want to do all the good things for the climate. But if you have a national government that is not pro-environmental, then your actions become constrained because they have more authority, they control more of the resources, and they, to a very large extent, can determine what you can and cannot do. So this is another dimension that we can look at these justice issues from, in terms of also the governance aspect. And then other side of this whole coin. So all that I've talked about so far is looking at the impacts, right? We are just looking at impacts of climate change. How about the actions that we are taking, to address these impacts? How we are transitioning from these current fossil systems. So these are technologies that are very familiar. We see them every day in the news now, they are all over. But then what do all these have in common? How do we make solar panels? How do we make wind turbines? How do we transition to smart grids? How do we make battery systems and EVs? So they all require what is known as rare earths or critical minerals. So you can think of the lithium, the silicon, the cobalt, the nickel. We need this to be able to transition smoothly. But the process by which these minerals are sourced, the process by which these technologies, the financing of that, is it just? It's a very big question, and there's a lot of interest in that also nowadays. So climate impacts, justice issues are not only climate impact based, but they are also mitigation based. And apart from the examples I give with the technology, you also hear of green grabbing. So well-intentioned climate solutions, especially carbon offset projects, for example, can have unintended negative consequences where, you have rural lands or indigenous lands being taken from people for the purpose of afforestation to be able to, absorb carbon from the atmosphere or trade it on the voluntary carbon markets. And also issues of conflicts. So here, the graph on the right, the chart on the right sort of demonstrates this perfectly. It shows the co-occurrence between water risk, conflict, food, and food insecurity in areas that the critical minerals that I mentioned are being mined. And you can see that there's a very close co-occurrence between the three of them. So wherever you are going to find, for example, a platinum mine, you are most likely to also find that there's a water scarcity, there's a conflict, and there's food insecurity. So these are all issues of, justice, because these resources mostly are sourced from developing countries, and then they end up being fueling the economies of much developed countries. But the impacts in terms of the adverse ones are felt in the developing countries. And a very good case example is the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is one of the mineral-rich countries. So 70% of the global cobalt supply comes from DRC. And for most people, if you mention this, DRC, the first thing that they can think of is conflict. So we all know how that country has been suffering and is still suffering from conflicts that are related to the extraction of these critical minerals. Now, this is not limited to only Congo. Around the globe, about 45 million people across 80 countries are actually engaged directly in artisanal small-scale mining. And in these countries, they don't have very good labor protection laws and social protection laws as well. So this resource in issues of human rights abuses, unreported deaths, and also issues of child labor. So all these are issues of justice. When you are driving your EV, like, do you know where the materials that were used in building that EV, do you know where they were coming from, where they were sourced, under what conditions they come from? And these are very important things that we need to pay attention to. And the other important thing is the climate finance imbalance. A lot of the climate action we are taking is dependent on finance. We need money to be able to chart a very positive course towards addressing climate change. Now, in the global financial architecture for climate action, there's this bias, almost 60% of climate finance goes to mitigation, but we have mitigation and adaptation. So adaptation receives less of the funding. And among these mitigation funds, over 75% goes to energy and transport, which kind of makes sense because these are the sectors that are responsible for also about 2/3 of the global emissions that we have. But who is investing in this energy and who owns, these investments? So in developing countries, less than 30% of renewable energy investments, are equity-based. This is like ownership-based funding, as compared to 50% in the rest of the much developed world. So I do a lot of research on energy transition and energy justice, and you have some scholars arguing, for example, in Africa that our energy transition is being auctioned, or some call it the transnationalization of the energy transition. So we argue for policy instruments that we should have competitive bidding processes so that everybody can bid to be able to invest in these clean energy systems. So you have these larger foreign corporations that come in. They are well resourced. They have more, technology and the ability to be able to do that. So they can easily outbid local companies that are not so well resourced. So you have all these big solar plants and wind farms, but then they are not locally owned because they depend on this, foreign finance. So this is one of the key things that we have to also look at in terms of who is, paying for the transition to a more safer and more greener planet, and how is this finance distributed. So that being said, it's not all just about problems that I've been talking about. There are also very good international efforts, and I know many of you are also making a lot of local and domestic efforts to address some of these issues. But I would just like to highlight these 3 key international efforts that are currently ongoing to address justice issues. So the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage is relatively new. I would say it was established during COP27 in Egypt and subsequently operationalized from COP28 through COP30. And right now, it's already in the first phase of dispersing grants to particularly developing countries, including small island states, to be able to make up for the harms that they have suffered from climate change. So under the Barbados implementation modalities, which is the operational framework for this fund, between 2025 and this year, 2026, about 250 million has been allocated, and they give this on grant basis between 5 to 20 million. So this is a very good opportunity for local governments. You can check the criteria, and if you qualify, you can also try to apply for this. The second one is the Just Energy Transition Partnership. Now, this has a very specific focus as it targets coal-dominant emerging economies. And it's basically a partnership between advanced economies in the global north and emerging economies in the global south that are dependent on coal. And they try to finance their transition from these coal-dependent economies to a more cleaner version. So countries that have benefited so far include South Africa, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And then the third one is the International Labour Organization Just Transition Principles, which I think is very important, especially for municipalities and local governments. Now, this is a non-binding policy framework. It's a set of guidelines that is showing how you can integrate justice principles into your plans, into your recruitment procedures, into your social protection measures. So it's a very good resource if you are planning to integrate justice issues in your climate planning. Now, why do local governments matter? We have all these international frameworks, we have all these policies, but who translates them into action? Who is much closer to the people, who sees the real problems? Is the local governments. which is why you are very important and critical in charting a course to a more just and sustainable future. So local governments, you engage communities, and then you deliver on climate adaptation on the ground. So before I conclude, I have two more questions for you, and we'll switch back again to Mentimeter. The first one is, does your city have a climate action plan? So it can be your city or your municipality or your local government jurisdiction. Do you have a climate action plan? And has your city mainstream justice considerations into your plan? So basic answers are yes, no, or if you are not sure, you can just tick one of them. We'll come back to this in the discussion section. So over to you, Juan. Maybe we can do this in 1 minute.
Yes, people are already answering. So if you go back to your Zoom, you should be able to see people's responses.
All right. Okay, so we have 8 for yes. All right. 6 for no and 0 for I'm not sure so far.
It might be that some participants, they represent associations, so there's no one plan for the association. So
okay, we can make it more broadly then. If you have an awareness whether you know of any initiative about justice in your area or in your city, you can just answer based on that.
Yes. So most have an action plan.
Action plan.
Okay. The difference, it was 9 and 7. Can you see the Mentimeter, Mark? Do you see that?
Yes, I can see it. We have no responses for only one so far for the second. Okay, they're coming in now. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so okay.
So it's very equal now.
Yeah. Let's see.
So don't remove it yet, Carlos, so Juanca, so he can have a general view. So it's now okay?
Yes. So we have 45 for yes. 8. Oh, okay. 42 for yes, 25 for no, and 33 not sure. Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah. So I asked because in my field of research also we try to look at how municipalities are integrating justice into their city plans, and there are some very good examples, from Europe and the Americas of how local governments and city authorities are integrating these justice, measures. So I would like to hear more on that during the discussion section. So to conclude, I would like to leave you with this quote, an optimistic one from one of the most prominent climate figures, who says that we are not doomed. We can choose to build a better world. So there is still more room, for improvement. We still have the chance. It's not all too late. And to build this better world, we have to keep in mind, as Mary Robinson reminds us, that climate change is a matter of justice. It is not just an environmental issue. So as you go back to your municipalities, as you go back to your decision-making table, as you go back to your implementation agendas, it's very important for you to walk away with these key steps to ensure that equality and social inclusion, issues of youth and gender involvement and considerations take a center stage in all your policies and plans. And also very important to use insights from behavioral science to design effective behavior change policies. So if you look at climate science on the one hand, there's a dominance of physical, the physical science basis. So you have all this, the physics and chemistry of climate change with the graphs and all that. Yes, these are very good. They paint a very good picture of the problem. They paint a very good picture of the pathways. But addressing climate change is just as much of a behavioral problem as it is for technology. Until we change our lifestyles and we change our habits, it will be very difficult. Until we rewrite rules and regulations, it will be very difficult to achieve positive impacts from all these technological solutions. So try as much as possible to also lean into the social sciences and use evidence from that to support your decision making. And the last point is to also exchange collaboration and best practices, which is why I think gatherings like this are very important. You bring together people from different municipalities, from different regions, and this can encourage dialogue in sharing best practices, in sharing what is working and what is not working, and charting shared solutions on the path forward. So that's it for my presentation, and then we have a few minutes from Q&A. Please feel free to ask questions or comments, or if you want to provide additional information on your rating of those two questions about action plans and justice in terms of maybe what success factors you have had in your jurisdiction in mainstreaming justice, what challenges, I'm sure it will be very interesting for me and others in the audience to hear from your experience. So again, thank you very much, and I look forward to your contributions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Extremely clear, and I don't think I need to summarize that because I think that your last slide really summarized everything with the words like climate change is a matter of justice, and we need to include adaptation, the voice of youth, gender equality aspects, and also social inclusion. So I think this is a good summary. And then Juanca, can you let us know if there were questions in the chat, and maybe you can address them because I've seen a few of them.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. So one from Marvin. So if this just transition FRLD pushes through, will this invalidate carbon offsetting and trade-offs? And how will this affect nations that are fully developed but do not have natural resources? We also have another question on the role of youth in international negotiations, and how do you see the engagement of youth in there, and some of the difficulties that they confront when we're engaging, and how they could overcome this challenge, and more general on how governments can actively engage communities in climate change action plans and their development.
All right. So thank you very much for those questions. So let me start with the question posed by Marvin regarding the fund for responding to loss and damage and the issue of carbon offsets. So the short answer is that I think no, the fund for responding to loss and damage does not, displace or offset the carbon offsetting mechanism that we have, because these are two different mechanisms when it comes to dealing with climate change. So the loss and damage specifically is looking at, what irreversible impacts climate change have had, especially in countries that do not have the capacity to respond. And what responsibility do countries that have contributed more to this problem have towards addressing this? So it is a fund that has been set aside to enable these countries to respond to those losses and damages. Carbon offsetting, on the other hand, allows a country to make up for their emissions by simply investing in emission reduction projects in a different country. So now we have the voluntary carbon markets, and we have this carbon crediting mechanism where people can, either invest in renewable energy, they invest in afforestation, and they have this carbon accounting to calculate and say, oh, this is how much carbon our project is taking from the atmosphere. So we have this much credit, and they can sell it to someone who is looking to offset, their own emissions. So these are two different streams as far as responding to these climate issues are concerned. One is looking at making up for the damage. The other is looking at more of mitigation. So I don't think they offset each other. And I hope that answers your question. And then the other one is about the youth, I think from Eva, in terms of the involvement of youth in international negotiations and how to overcome this challenge. Yeah, so recently, at least from my experience in participating in these climate weeks, I've seen that a lot of effort is being made to bring youth, to the table. But the problem is, when I was growing up in Africa, there used to be a saying that, they said small boys are to be seen and not to be heard in the midst of adults. So it is one thing bringing the youth to the table, and the other thing is listening to them and really taking what they say into account. So one of the key challenges I would say is that it is not enough to just bring the youth to the table. You need to give them a voice, and you need to listen and take into account what they have to say. And I think this is where the current issue is. Now, what mechanisms can we put in place? And here, local governments are very important because identifying the problems starts with you. You are the one who live and work with the communities. So I think you can be able to, engage youth starting from the local level, and then you get their opinions in your plans, in your policies, and your actions. Then you can push this up the ladder from your side. And the other one is the more high level, engagement of youth. So when you have this COP every year, you have the negotiations. Sometimes they happen between closed doors, and you have country representatives that go there. I don't know, back in Japan, each year we have this training program where we select 2 or 3 young people, normally college students, to go for this COP just to observe the process and the negotiations. But of course, when they go there, they are just spectators, They don't get a say in this negotiation. So that's one thing that I think needs to change. We need to find ways of giving more voice and not just the physical presence of youth in the room. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question very well, but these are just some thoughts along that line. And then the other question is, how do governments actively engage in climate change, and also engagement of community climate change in action plan development? So I will start from the community aspect, and I think we will all appreciate the importance of participatory planning as local government, officials, because at least from my experience working with local governments in Ghana, I know we have this national development planning system, but the system starts from the local level. So the local governments are supposed to go into the communities in their jurisdictions. They are supposed to do community gatherings. Sometimes they have to do surveys to talk to the people and get their real needs, get their real problems. When it comes to climate, they have to look at, in terms of adaptation, what challenges are facing different groups, women and all that. And then they pull this together into a 4-year development plan. So this plan now becomes the basis on which they come up with projects. And if NGOs are coming in to sponsor like climate projects, they have to go into the plans and look at what projects align with their priorities, and then they fund that. So I think participatory planning, starting from the local level, is very important. And at the national level, climate change needs not to just be seen as a political agenda. I think that's what national governments need to understand. This is not just a political agenda. It's an issue of human development. You cannot progress in terms of social and economic development if you don't address some of these issues. As we have shown, climate change is basically an issue of justice. Poverty, inequality, injustice, these are all tied to climate impacts. So I think that national governments need to be more intentional, about addressing this climate change. It's not just about having policies. You need to follow through with the funding, with the authority, and delegate power to local levels to be able to implement these solutions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. I would just give you the floor for hours and hours because it's really nice to listen to your feedback. Now, unfortunately, we need to move on. So we're gonna take a group picture. So please turn on your cameras. Okay. And then my communications colleagues, they will be taking a picture. So I will say 1, 2, 3 just in a second. Okay. So I will, yeah, okay. So 1, 2, 3 and you smile, okay? So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We need to move to page 2, so don't move or keep smiling just in case. 1, 2, 3. And the last 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we have you all at some point. Okay. So thank you very much for the pictures taken, and also Mark for your excellent presentation and your feedback on the questions, and also to the participants for also raising the questions. So now we're going to move to the block on presentations from different members. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have 2 co-presenters from our Cologne and also from the community in Ucayali in Peru. They're going to be co-presenting a partnership, a collaboration on the centralized cooperation actions and adaptation and resilience. It will also look into community engagement, and they will tell us how this partnership was born when they met in one of the COP meetings, and how this knowledge that they have been sharing since 2017 is being used now, and what is the added value of these partnerships, from north, south, etc. So I leave you the floor to first Andreas Walter, and then it will be Robert. Guimaraes, who I also have to thank because he's in a very special situation now because he's in Peru. It's heavily raining there, but he managed to find a spot to connect to the Train Academy. So special thanks to him. So Andreas, you have the floor first for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. So hopefully we'll manage it to get online, but there's really heavy rain actually in Peru. So I would like to talk a little bit about how we manage this. We mentioned this partnership. It started 10 years ago at the COP in Marrakesh, in Morocco. So when indigenous leaders asked us from the German delegation, they need support and publicity because the palm oil industry is cutting down the rainforests in order to make these plantations. And so a few weeks later, we had also from Peruvian delegation of indigenous leader a visit in Cologne, and they asked again for support in their struggle to defend their territories. So Yarinacocha is in the province of Ucayali, and that's in the east of Peru, not far away from the Brazilian border. So the city council the city council of Cologne, as well as the city council of Yarinacocha, made this partnership in 2017, or so a year after the COP. And in order to support the indigenous people, to save their forests, their territories, and to fight for the fundamental and the human rights. And you see a photo actually right now. That's one of these settlements of indigenous people who were who fight against this this palm oil industry, and some people also died in this community. And we visited them. I think it was in 2019, and and what we made first, we planned to make a partnership only with an indigenous organization that was a Fikunau, who is organized in these regions, but the Ministry of Economic Protection in Germany and Cooperation in Germany said you have to do a partnership also with a city in this region. So so that was a trilateral partnership that was quite good. But after 10 years, we can say that the cooperation with the indigenous organization is much more better than with the city, because they always change. When they change the government, the city, there is a new crew, so everything is new, and that is with the indigenous organizations was much more easier, because they sometimes also change the leaders, but not the whole board or the whole activists. So that was quite good. So what was important for us is to make concrete action on climate mitigation as well as adaptation. But we also, in the last years, we had an exchange of experts, of civil society, and also, we are a little bit proud of it, it's also an exchange of schools and students and volunteers in both directions. So for us, it was very important to bring the people together. So that was how the decentralized cooperation worked. What did we made in the last year? So what were our assets of Cologne? I think we are quite good in flood protection, like sponge cities, activism, so greener cities, reforestation. So Cologne, the city of Cologne, we inaugurated every year a small forest, because our citizens and us always to have more greener cities, because the city is getting hotter and hotter, and we had a few years ago, due to sponge cities, we had also this heavy flood here in our region. And and what we saw in the last years, that also the climate change affects the people in the rainforest. So those people with the smallest footprint in greenhouse gas emissions, they have the same problems. That's what was also for us a very good learning process. And when we were there, I was there 3 times. Once I had a week without rain in rainforest, so opposite to this what's happening today there. We had it, especially the last 2 years, a lot of flood disasters as well as fires and droughts. So we could support with some money also especially indigenous people due to these problems. And yeah, the third thing what I would like to tell you is a little bit about capacity building elements. So the most important thing for the indigenous people is of being heard. So what's happening around their territories, because they're in the rainforest and there's no police, there is no TV, and things are happening very, very silent and very quiet and quick, and nobody noticed what's happening there. So that was very, very important for them, as well as empowerment. And what was also quite interesting is that in Nacocha, that's the city, they made, in cooperation with us, the first climate action plan in Peru. So that was also one very interesting, that people started also to think what's happening with the city, as well as with the people in the city and the indigenous people. So I'm a little bit proud on this cooperation, and for us, so climate change and fight against climate change went very concrete in the last year. So we have some good examples. The reason is a bad one, the climate change, but I think it was very good to learn a little bit from each other. So now I don't know if Robert from FICO now is present, or it's still raining so heavily that he can't join us now.
He was still online, but I don't know if he can join in. Roberto, can you hear us? He was on a while ago, but if not, we can always come back to him.
He's online now. Yes, he's. Hola,
Okay.
Robert.
Roberto, can you hear us? We can see you. That's all right. Something.
Speak in Spanish to him.
I put in the chat that he's going to speak Spanish if he manages to connect, but if you have not loaded the latest Zoom, then you should have access to the automatic translation in different languages. Roberto, can you hear us? ¿Me oyes? Roberto, ¿me oyes? ¿Sí? ¿Me oyes?
Hola.
Hola, vale.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Vale, les he dicho a Roberto que usted va a hablar en español, hable despacito por si alguno entiende bien.
Voy a hablar en español.
Sí, y habrá y hay traducción automática en Zoom para los que lo quieran poner.
Ok.
Vale, pues le doy 5 minutos de la palabra. Muchas
Okay.
gracias por el esfuerzo.
Gracias. Quiero agradecer la oportunidad de tener este intercambio. Consideramos que las cooperaciones climáticas del norte con el sur contribuyen el esfuerzo conjunto para mitigar el cambio climático que hoy, o la crisis climática que hoy enfrenta el mundo. En tal sentido, la cooperación entre la ciudad de Colonia y Yarinacocha ha representado un esfuerzo, una ventana de oportunidad de cooperación entre una ciudad y una ciudad pequeña en la Amazonía de Perú. Nosotros estamos ubicados en la frontera de la Amazonía peruana y colindamos con el estado de Acre, con Brasil. La población shipiba es aproximadamente de 35,000 habitantes y estamos organizados en comunidades desde el territorio. En este escenario actual estamos presionados por las grandes industrias extractivas, por ejemplo, como la expansión de monocultivo de palma, que afecta a territorios indígenas, territorios comunales. La experiencia de cooperación climática entre Colonia y Yarinacocha nos ha permitido también articular este intercambio cultural entre universidades, entre colegios. Y consideramos que este intercambio también ha fortalecido el tener un concepto clave de qué acciones conjuntas podemos implementar para la protección del clima. Entonces, involucrar a varios actores de la sociedad en una cooperación climática es muy importante. Y ahí que nosotros, como un futuro escenario, exigimos mayor esfuerzos y cooperación entre el Estado, las instituciones públicas del Estado y la sociedad civil. También mayor responsabilidad ambiental al sector privado, que son las que emiten mayores insumos que afectan al clima, ¿no? Y en ese sentido también es importante exigir a los estados que implementen políticas y acciones climáticas más eficientes desde el sector público, es decir, mayor inversión para la protección del clima, para tener comunidades y ciudades saludables. La Conferencia del Cambio Climático de las Naciones Unidas tiene el reto de que la sociedad privada, la sociedad civil, participe en el diálogo oficial, lo cual no ocurre hoy en día, porque la sociedad civil participa como observador y no está en las mesas de diálogos, en las negociaciones para implementar los acuerdos de París y otros acuerdos que ha habido. Finalmente, quiero decir que la cooperación entre Yarinacocha nos ha permitido también abrir otros espacios, tener otras experiencias de colaboración y trabajo conjunto. Y por eso el reto es fortalecer las cooperaciones climáticas. Mayor participación de la sociedad civil en la toma de decisiones de los gobiernos y actores locales. Muchas gracias por la invitación y por su atención.
Muchísimas gracias, Robert. Muy claro, ha sido clarísimo. Vale, pues no sé si se puede quedar un poco más de tiempo online porque hemos previsto preguntas al final, pero por las condiciones climáticas no lo sé.
Ahora estoy con lluvias y torrenciales fuertes. Espero quedarme, si no, les agradezco igualmente. Muchas gracias.
Vale, muchas gracias. Okay, thank you very much, Robert, for the presentation. I was asking him if he could stay until the end, but because of the climatic conditions that you can see, it's not certain. Okay, but if you have any question addressing his presentation, please put them in the chat, and if I spot them, I will address them directly to him. So I won't wait for the end of the sessions just for these climatic conditions exceptionally. So thank you very much, Robert and Andreas, for excuse me, for the very clear presentation. We retain from this collaboration that you just started. It's just the start of the process, but this is just the beginning. So you're going to continue this. You're going to continue benefiting from the experience, and you're going to continue enlarging this cooperation to other fields. So I think this is a very clear example that a big city can also collaborate with a specific group in a different continent. And, this is like mutual learning. So this is very, very beneficial. So thanks to both. And now we're also moving to another part of the world. So we're going to move to overseas. And we're going to have two colleagues, Juan Chuton and Rémi Boyer, who are going to co-present the BioPlateau project that is focusing on the centralized cooperation and community-based resource management. And again, you will also start co-presenting this, so you have approximately 5 minutes each. Okay. And they also have slides. So you have the floor, Frank, and then Rémi. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva. Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Choton. I've been working on the water resource management for most of my career. And for the last year, I've been based in French Guyana. I work on cooperation across the Guyana Shield region, till relatively unknown, but one of the richest in the world in terms of biodiversity and natural resources. At the same time, it's faced very strong challenges. So the question is, how do we build fair climate action in territories with strong inequalities? Next slide. So just a few words about the context. In our region, everything is shaped by geography. We have remote communities, strong dependence on rivers, and unequal access to basic services. And one of key feature is that our river basin are transboundary. In many cases, borders actually follow rivers. It's a case in all the Guyana Shield. So climate challenges are immediately shared across country. Next slide. Climate change amplifies existing vulnerabilities. Droughts affect water access, floods impact housing and mobility. And these vulnerabilities are not equally shared. They are stronger in remote areas where access to basic services is already limited. In many cases, the most isolated communities are the first impacted and the least equipped to cope with these changes. This is why climate change is not just on environmental issues. It directly raises a question of equity and access to essential services. Climate is not only environmental, it's also social and territorial. Next. Our first step was simple: understand before acting. We mapped actors and knowledge and worked to understand how communities are organized. We went to the field, taking directly with people along the river, and we realized a solution cannot be imposed from outside. So we developed adapted approaches based on local culture, language, and realities. Moving from top down to real co-construction, it's the approach. Next slide. Inclusion is central, not just consultation, but real participation in decision making. it means recognizing local knowledge and adapting public action to local realities. For us, this is what justice center leadership means. Next. We also create space for dialogue, like the Kotika platform, to connect actors across borders. This is where decentralized cooperation becomes essential. Rémi Boyer will explain this part. What we take from this experience is simple. Climate action only works if it's grounded in local realities and built with communities. Thank you. I let the word to you, Rémi.
Thank you, Frank. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on your position geographically now, dear colleagues and friends. Thanks to all the organizers for the invitation, the Council of European Municipalities and Region, Platforma. I'll also mention here Cité Unifrance that transmitted the invitation to us. In the continuity to Frank's presentation, I will talk now from the point of view of the International Office Water, which is a non-for-profit organization that has been mandated by the French Guiana Water Office for the design and facilitation of the Vieux Plateau initiative in order to promote concrete action and contributions to address part of the expectations that has been presented by Frank just now. Vieux Plateau is focusing on the Maroni transboundary river basin shared between French Guiana and Suriname, and also the Oyapock river basin, which is shared between Brazil and French Guiana. You have the map here in the screen. This project started in 2019 and has been financed by the European Union through the Amazon Interreg Cooperation Program, PCIA, with our authority for management is the French Guiana region, the CTG, the French Guiana Territorial Collectivity, and also supported by the French state and by various stakeholders, including from Ababa State and Suriname. The total budget for the project and its two phases until now is 4 million euros. And the International Office for Water has the honor to be the facilitator and coordinator of these activities. So to be more concrete on what has been done since then, and also to go directly in the continuity with example to what Frank said, there are three main axes that can show that from bottom-up perspective, a lot of things can happen and sustainable things also. First, in the field of governance, conference, regional dialogues prepared at local level, allowed to take decision and orientation that are sustainable from the area, especially in terms of agreement between countries and creation, prefiguration, and then creation of permanent bodies to support public decision, water resources on these areas, and also to discuss river basin planning, based on the diverse, culturally very rich and diverse reality of this river basins. So it implies and required, obviously, to take into account all the specificities in terms of customary authorities, local authorities, national authorities, European authorities related to this area, and obviously to consider this diversity at the moment to orientate and prioritize the issues for water resources management that are very strong in this region. The second point, first was to know each other better. The second one is to know better the water resources. With technical working group, I will not enter too much into detail in this area, but it's important also to enlighten the public decision with local realities, perception from the people, and the technical also dynamics of the area. So it requires monitoring networks in the context of climate change, which is the main subject of our training today. Innovation with spatial hydrology. We know that floods, we know that also the droughts in the area are very strong changes that can affect the daily lives of the populations, and it requires to use all the innovation available to support this, and also to take into account the challenges and to address the challenges for the monitoring in the area. And then the spatial hydrology is giving us many solutions to be complementary to traditional monitoring with the station in the place. And also data and information sharing allows us to disseminate and to show what are these transformation in place, especially, for instance, for illegal gold mining, which affects the quality of the ecosystem and also the health of population, for also the little water cycle, as we call it, but including drinking water supply, sanitation, and waste management, also related to the evolution of the demography in the area, which is very important. The last point I wanted to mention here, in close coordination with Frank, is awareness raising. So it's good to know each other better, it's good to know better water resources, but it's also very good to make known what are the local challenges with participatory workshops, water classes, which is one of the main outputs in terms of outreach of the project in the two basins. Outreach tools, specifically, for instance, for diffusion of the information related to floods to institution and then to population, and territorial dialogue, especially, as Frank said, with the Kotika platform, which is an installed way of making the population needs taken into account in the permanent body for support to decisions that has been created by the project. We thank you very much. And I also mentioned here the CTG and the PCIA that facilitated the financing and also the support the preparation of this event with Mrs. Lawrence contact that appears in the last slide. Thank you very much.
Okay. Merci, Rémi. Thank you very much, and also very, very clear. Okay. So we're also taking note of the websites that you're sharing and also contacts, so people and participants can always come back to you with further requests. And please do put your questions in the chat, and we'll come back to that after all presentations have been made. Now we move to Elena Quesada, and she's a Global Justice Education Officer at the Global Education Unit in the province of Barcelona, DIVA. And then she's going to be talking about how municipalities and local organizations are implementing climate justice initiative, and especially related to gender equality, education, awareness raising. So, Elena, you have the floor also for 5 minutes approximately. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Okay. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to these sessions. My name is Elena, and I work at the Barcelona Provincial Council, which is a supramunicipal local government institution. My presentation here will be a little bit different because I won't be talking about decentralized cooperation, but more about what we are doing as a supramunicipal local government. Okay. And as a Barcelona Provincial Council, our role is to provide support to the 311 municipalities that it represents around 74% of the population of Catalonia. You can see the region here in the map in red. And then we work together with municipalities in a coordinated way to design and implement actions that respond to the real local needs. As you can see here, Barcelona Province Council, municipalities, citizens, and I would like to include inside the citizens group, civil society, organized civil societies and NGOs. And we support them providing economic resources, technical and advisory support, materials, guides, training for local staff and educators, etc. And this is very relevant, but because within this work, together with municipalities and citizens, we have seen that this triangular relationship is essential for delivering meaningful and participatory public policies, but also it allows us to grasp that there is a growing interest in environmental justice, particularly among young people and professionals that work with young people too. That's why we started implementing this perspective. So our unit works within the global citizenship education perspective, and we apply the environmental justice inside the GCE. So we don't focus on climate adaptation or mitigation strategies, this technical work, but we work more in behavior changing, narrative storytelling, something that was also talked yesterday, one of the speeches. And so our main goal is to focus on understanding the structural causes of these global inequalities that the other speakers are explaining, and to examine the unequal impacts of climate change and how these global interdependencies between us and the other part of the world has consequences, what we do here and what happens in the other part of the world. So through GCE, we would like to explore what are the colonial extraction history or the actual unequal trade relations, how the environmental impacts these impacts are motivated by our consumption modes and so on. So we work with storytelling, lived experiences, and critical analysis to foster the sense of co-responsibility of citizens, right? So as I mentioned in the beginning, we support municipalities in their work within environmental justice activities or perspective. But also the council, we also design our own education materials and proposals. So the municipalities can use it, they can easily adapt, and they can implement it. But also with civil societies and NGO, we provide financial support through grants. That's how they implement projects with this perspective. For the internal work, we are still designing some of the products that will be especially street-based activities to reach broader audiences, or another public that we center is secondary schools, so we can have like a more extended work with them. These materials are still in the early phase of development, but I hope we can share some results maybe for the next seminar next year. And here are some examples on how we work with municipalities and how municipalities implement their own activities and projects. But the main point is that they shifted their activities from only environmental activities. They are now introducing some justice perspective. And they tackle global interconnections behind different environmental issues. So that's the new perspective we are emphasizing. And some of the examples are that the municipalities are interconnecting some of their decentralized cooperation projects internationally to bring the examples in the schools and how to motivate students to change their consumption or to raise awareness within the schools or within their communities. Also, they implement a lot of practical projects, so it's easier for young people to get involved and empowered rather than be overwhelmed with the complexity of these issues, right? Here I present a summary of the projects we are currently funding through the grants program, but I don't want to go into detail because these initiatives are led by the NGOs, that they are experts in those topics. But just to emphasize that 4 of the 11 funded projects that we are currently helping with economic funding, they are strongly incorporating environmental justice perspective, and they mix, they are addressing the topic from different angles. For instance, Spanish Red Cross, they are talking about environmental justice through talking about migration, gender, climate displacement. Alternativa, which is another NGO from here, and they are talking more about indigenous people, worldviews, and their relation with nature and water and land, extractivism, mining, some of these topics. And for us, working with NGOs and the local governments allow us to better understand emerging needs within the global education system and the international cooperation, because normally they are often the first to detect these new challenges, and we can support them in their need. And of course, all this work comes with significant challenges, which manifest differently for each actor involved. across the board. One key challenge, and I guess that many of you have this same challenge, is that to ensure real citizen engagement in local initiatives. Also, Pablo, in his speech in the beginning, he was emphasizing that, right? How youth participation, citizen engagement, future generation involvement makes democratic process, and it allows for a real change, right? What else? Also, the need of consistency and the currents of those initiatives, the importance to work together different departments to make our work more comprehensive. And then the challenge of the new global agenda, or some of the political actors that are starting to deny some of the climate change speeches. So that will be also a big challenge to confront, right? Okay. And that would be it. Thank you very much. And yeah.
Gracias, Elena. Okay. Also very, very clear. So we save time for questions at the end. Okay. So bear with us as well. Thank you very much. And then now we move on to Anne Barham. So
hello, good afternoon.
Oui. Bonjour, Anne.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. And then Anne is a climate and gender senior expert at Women Engaged for a Common Future, and she has been participating in COP meetings for many years, and she represents also the women constituency. So Anne is going to present us the role of this constituency in the climate negotiations and also a gender transformative local project. So Anne, you have the floor, please. Voilà.
Merci, Eva. Thank you very much. So indeed, my name is Anne Barr, and I'm a senior gender and climate expert at Women Engaged for a Common Future, with whom I've been engaged for now more than 20 years. And following the COP negotiations, climate negotiations, for about 10 years. I'm also a member of Climate Chance, if you can see the small logo there. So very much convinced that it's absolutely necessary to always make the link between the global governance and what's happening on the ground at the local level, and also ensuring that what is decided and what governments commit to should be taken at the local level and also implemented at the local level. So here I'm going to talk quickly about a major milestone that was reached at the last COP, is the adoption of a gender action plan. So we can go to the next slide. I will present quickly the Women and Gender Constituency. So as you probably know, all of the UN conventions have official representation of civil society groups called observers, and the Women and Gender Constituency is one of them. And WECF is one of the founding members of that Women and Gender Constituency. Today, it's a very broad platform of feminist organizations across the world, more than 60 organizations, network organizations, that have been working for many, many years to ensure that gender is really mainstreamed into all of the climate decisions, whether it be finance, adaptation, or mitigation or technology, etc. And it's important for you to understand that, because then it really enables you to act at the global level and at the local level, and make sure that you can use those decisions that have been taken by governments. So next slide, I'll show you very quickly, and we'll just fly through these slides because I don't have so much time and I want to end up with a case study. But as you see, it's taken a very long time to really have important decisions in the UNFCCC process on gender. The most important was in 2014, the Lima Work Program, and then different gender action plans that were implemented gradually at the international level first, and now more and more at the national and local level. And the last gender action plan that was adopted at COP30, so just recently in Belém, is now going to last for 9 years. So we have a long time and a lot of commitments that are important to understand. On the next slide, we'll go quickly to what's in there. So It was adopted in Belém. It was adopted by all governments that are parties to the UNFCCC. So this means they commit to implement it also. And it's, as I said, a 9-year plan. So until 2034, these commitments are there on the agenda of governments. And despite the backlash that we are seeing today at the global level and from certain countries, these commitments can always be recalled, and we can ensure that at the local level they are implemented. So it has 5 priorities areas that focus on capacity building, on information, on trainings and communication. Also, of course, there is a very big focus on participation, and I've heard today from different presentations that participatory approaches are extremely important. So that's an important area of that Gender Action Plan. And then, of course, means of implementation, finance and technology, and then also monitoring and evaluation. So in total, it's 27 activities and 98 deliverables. So it's really the most ambitious Gender Action Plan that was ever committed to in the UNFCCC. The implementation is by all stakeholders, governments, local governments, civil society, UN entities, etc., and at all levels. Next slide. And then we'll really fly through these. So this is really a launchpad for accelerated action, and this is how the UNFCCC Secretariat actually presents it. And we'll fly through the next slide quickly so that I don't take too much time. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So it's built for impact. It means that there are more structured deliverables, and also there is improved evidence base. So for example, there are commitments to gather gender and age disaggregated data and reporting. So it's a stronger accountability system. And also there are better systems for improving the mainstreaming across and beyond the convention. So coherence with other conventions, like the Convention on Biodiversity. It's very important to link to that, or the Convention on Desertification. And also across the different constituted bodies of the Climate Convention. Next slide. So all hands need to be on board, and I won't go into the details, but here you can see all the organizations that are actually related or solicited to implement that Gender Action Plan. We'll go to the next slide with a quick analysis, and we can jump here. Yeah, first of all, analysis made both by the UNFCCC Secretariat and us, civil society, we have to acknowledge that differentiated impacts of climate change and opportunities for all women and girls, including women from local communities, migrant women, women with disabilities, women smallholder farmers, women from indigenous communities, also remote communities, are shaped by multi-dimensional factors. So this is a way of recognizing the intersectional dimensions of gender discrimination, or of how inequalities are actually lived and experienced by people in all the territories. And so there is no one-size-fits-all approach, but it's really important that as a local government, you also take your own, let's say, view or experience of that Gender Action Plan and decide on yourself how you want to implement it. And it's a way to recognize these realities. So even if the word intersectional is not in the plan and is not in the text, at least there is the recognition that inequalities are shaped by multidimensional factors, and that climate change exacerbates those inequalities very strongly. So it's fundamental to integrate gender into your actions. Next slide. Yeah, So again, we'll jump here to the next, just to go quickly over what is important. You have the next slide? Yeah, okay. So the gains are that things like participation and recognition of different groups are being named in that gender action plan, and that elements like unpaid care work or also, as I said, disaggregated data are being recognized as a commitment by governments to act on these. So this is a significant gain. Also the fact that groups like Afro-descendant women, for example, or women environmental defenders are being recognized as actors in climate action, and that it is the obligation of states to protect them is also included into that plan. Next slide. So the losses, or what we couldn't get as women and gender constituency and still regret, and I'll focus on one element, is finance. So the Gender Action Plan doesn't have a specific financial mechanism at the global or national or even local level. So this means you need to integrate this into other funding systems or into other mechanisms. And also, of course, you still need to have indicators to measure and monitor, and those are not set as such. You have deliverables, but not really indicators to measure results and success. And then we'll jump now to next slide and to the case study. So there are different implementation pathways, as you can understand. Yes?
No, and you will need to speed up because we've got 15 minutes.
We're almost there. Yeah, let's jump to next slide. Yes, so how to use the gap is, as I was explaining, is for you to decide which priority is most relevant for your work and then work on it. And I'll jump to next slide for a very quick example of how the Gender Action Plan can be implemented. So the case study is about an organization working on women land tenure rights in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So in this country, agriculture is being produced and food is produced by 70% by women. So 70% of the farmers are women, but almost none of them, less than 10%, have access to land tenure rights. So they are not owners of the land that they are working on. And this organization decided to work on that specific advocacy and worked both at the local and at the national level, and even at international level for recognition. So next slide quickly, you'll see here what has been reached in terms of transformative outcomes, and that's very important to talk also about gender transformative impacts, because every time you see gender inequalities and you try to analyze which they are, you understand that to be successful in your climate action, you need to transform those realities. So many women advocates have been trained to interact with local governments, provincial institutions, and also with customary chiefs and customary authorities at the village level. And they have organized 144 participatory mapping exercises. So you see on the picture, it's basically mapping the area that is being worked as agricultural space and land, and then get the village and the community to recognize for women the right to own that land on which she's been working for years and where she produces cultures. And basically this then has been also transported into provincial edits, and even at the national level in the land law it took many years to reform the land law of the DRC, and there were a lot of consultations at the local and provincial level. And the CEFLED, this organization, worked with provincial authorities and the national authorities to ensure that there were 3 articles that officially in the law recognize gender equality in access to land tenure rights, and also the responsibility of local authorities and the national authorities to ensure that this equal right is being implemented and respected. So it's a very tremendous success and a milestone achievement that has been reached there, and that's why I wanted to showcase that specific case study, because it has been really a work that was done at the local, at the provincial, and at the national level. Yes, and I thank you very much for your attention, and thank you also for inviting me and giving me the opportunity. Thanks, Eva.
And I know that is exciting topic, and I know that is very complex as well to be involved in COP negotiations, but the beauty of this is that there is a concrete project. So it's not just the global negotiation, but you can also see the impact on the ground with a concrete example. So that's very positive. So thank you very much. And then we'll go to the last presentation, and it's by one of our colleagues in Athens. His name, and correct me if I don't pronounce it correctly, is Nikos Syrogelos, and he's appointed municipal councillor for the climate contract and social economy in the city of Athens. And he's gonna run us through the work that they've been doing in Athens on the Youth Climate Action Fund and also the Athens Youth Climate Assembly. So, Nikos, you have the floor.
Yes, thanks a lot for the invitation.
Okay.
I hope you can. Yes, I am just trying to share my presentation. Can you see now my presentation?
Yes, we see it. So you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So we have discussed a lot about gender issues, about climate justice. I will try in brief to explain about engagement, participation of young people, because very often young people are excluded from the political decisions, and especially from the discussion about measures for climate mitigation and climate adaptation. I will explain 2 of the most important projects of the municipality of Athens. The one of them is the drafting climate contract of Athens. It was the preparation for drafting a climate plan and the investment climate plan. And we established 2 different institutions. One of them was Climate Forum, with established organizations, chambers, universities, civil society, different professional and environmental and social organizations. But the second institution was a Youth Climate Assembly, because we know that young people are not very active in the frame of established organizations. So we wanted to give the floor to the young people and also influence the process for the climate contract. And a little bit later, it started the project in collaboration with the Bloomberg Philanthropy, the project of Youth Climate Action in Athens. It's a very useful tool for the implementation of youth climate plans by young people. So it is not only discussing or drafting policy issues or including the views of young people in climate contract, but also give them some flexible financing and other tools to implement their own projects for climate protection and climate adaptation. So I think this is very important when we discuss about climate justice, about more inclusive policies, to give the floor to young people, but also to give them tools for the implementation. We develop a mechanism inside the municipality to support the young people to do things, not only to talk about, but also to do things. We have a close collaboration long term, and we support them. So at the moment, we have support 30 projects prepared and implemented by young people. So it's a nice, beautiful experience. And also this approach, we try to use this approach, youth engagement in every project, at least the projects I am implementing in Athens. And we want to develop a new relationship with the young people, a relationship based on trust, because as you all know, there is mistrust today, and especially young people are not very enthusiastic with what happens in many countries. So we have to re-establish the collaboration with young generation. And this is through climate issues. I think it's very important because they will experience the climate impacts in their life. It is a long-term effect. It's not something that we can stop tomorrow and we can improve the quality of life in the future. This is very important to understand. The previous generations hope that the world will be better. But now many young people are disappointed and believe that the future world will be worse. So we have to work together to stop climate crisis, at least the rate of climate change, the speed of climate change, and also to improve through the climate activity, the quality of life at the local level, although we know that we will have very extreme weather events in the future, but at the same time, we have tools to improve the resilience of the cities. This is from dialogue to real climate governance and also together doing things. The Athens Youth Climate Assembly was designed to create a space for youth dialogue for the preparation of the plan. Now we will start the next phase, that it is the implementation of climate contract, the climate action plan. And this means that we will include also the opinion and the views and of the young people, and also tools for the implementation. This is about youth climate actions in Athens, as I told before. And until now, we have a number of 30 projects already finished, and we will start a new project from June on. I think it was a very interesting experience because young people from 15 to 24 prepare a project, then the project is evaluated from a group of people inside the municipality, and then if the evaluation is successful, then they receive something between 4 to 4.5 thousand euros for the implementation. And of course, the municipality has to be supportive and remove barriers, because many times there are barriers or obstacles for the implementation of a nice project, and especially when the young people not very familiar with bureaucracy. So we try to be supportive and removing barriers, but without controlling the initiative, without take the initiative from the hands of the young people. We want this youth autonomy, and we try to support them to enhance their capacity, skills, and knowledge. There are some key factors and good practices through this collaboration until now. We try to work together with youth in an open and participatory way. There is a clear structure, what they can do by themselves, what they are waiting from the municipality, how they can continue the project, and how they can collaborate with other youth groups. It is very important that we enhance the collaboration between the youth groups, and we ask for networking among them, and this is also very, very interesting. Of course, we try to support the young people through the collaboration with the different departments and services and experts of the municipality. And we evaluate the proposals, the youth proposals, very seriously. So they know that they have to do something very well organized, very well structured. It's not just we give money, but we try to support the young people to be able to do a real project and implement this as a real project, and will be very useful for their future work. And we work also not only with young people 15 to 24, but we work also with schools. And there is a real excellent example of primary school. We have changed totally the school, but based on the proposals of pupils of this primary school, they turn the roof of the school in a garden. We installed photovoltaic. They collect the rainwater, and they make a total different roof of a school. And it's not the only school. There are a number of 4 or 5 schools, secondary schools.
Nicola, sorry, we will need to start coming to an end because the link might disappear.
Just one, just to finish. I mean, the outcome of this collaboration is that the young people have skills, capacities, they can improve their knowledge, but they need a fruitful and collaborative environment to develop all this.
That's a brilliant conclusion. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And then, Juanca, before we come to the concluding remarks, Juanca, do you want to tell us quickly if there were any urgent comments that we would need to address? Because of time constraints, I don't think we can address them all, but we can also, you can also ask me by email, and then we can address them to the speakers afterwards. But do you want to, Juanca, quickly?
I think there's a couple of questions that are for a specific speaker. So, for example, Elena, they were asking about how your activities are funded by the city. You just responded. The same for Andrea Welter. There was a question on how do you plan to continue the activities, and how do you, whether it's a national, regional, or local funding between Cologne and Yarinacocha. So, if you're still around and want to answer, we can give you 1 minute to answer. If not, you can answer in the chat. Andreas, are you there? Yeah.
Yes, of course. So of course we are continuing our cooperations. What we're doing as well. So we talked about youth and women. So we also have a queer, indigenous LGBTIQ group, and we bring all this. All them together also. So it's a little bit beside of climate action. So but also to human rights, what's running actually, and the programs are running, and we have funds also from our national government to support this the climate action. So it's going on, and we work a little bit better with the indigenous groups than this with the city of Yarinacocha. It's more difficult, but perhaps we have elections there in the autumn, and perhaps there's another mayor, and the cooperation will be a little bit better than with the running mayor.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So now, for the sake of timing, so I'll give the floor to Pablo. And then please, any questions, just email me, and then I'll make sure that you get an answer. But Pablo, I leave the floor to you for the concluding remarks and your takeaways for this session. Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you, Eva. Can you listen? Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists. And I think we close this academy with a clear understanding. Climate justice is not a single issue. It's a systemic condition that cuts across territories, governance levels, and even generations. And as we reflect on these 2 days, I think 3 main things have stood out to me. The first one is that climate injustice is structural, and so must be our response. As Mark reminded us today, even at 1.1 degrees of warming, impacts are already severe and deeply unequal. We're facing inequalities across scales, between North and South, but also within countries and across generations. And as Robert shared from the Peruvian Amazon, these are not abstract dynamics. They are lived realities where communities with the smallest carbon footprints face the greatest pressures, while still lacking the full voice in decision-making. And this brings us back to what we heard from Pablo at the opening, that climate responsibility must be understood as a global common, shared, yes, but not equally experienced. And that addressing climate change requires us to confront not only emissions, but also power, inequality, and exclusion. Second, justice must be territorialized through multi-level governance and through local action. Across today's discussions, one idea was constant. Global frameworks alone are not enough. From the cooperation between Colón and Yarinacocha, presented by Andreas, we saw how decentralized cooperation can respond to concrete territorial needs, combining technical expertise with local and indigenous leadership. From the experiences shared by Frank and Remy in the Guyana Shield, we saw that climate governance is inherently complex, cross-border, multi-level, and rooted in diverse realities. Their work reminds us that solutions cannot be imposed. They must be built from the territory through dialogue, knowledge, and trust. And importantly, as highlighted through the work of the Women and Gender Constituency, global frameworks are evolving but remain incomplete. The adoption of the Enhanced Gender Action Plan at COP30 is a major step forward, recognizing intersectional inequalities and differentiated impacts. Yet gap remains, even, I think, particularly even in finance and accountability, which again points to the need for strong implementation at all levels. This is precisely where local and regional governments play their role, as the level closest to the people, as implementers and designers of local policy, and as political actors shaping how the transition unfolds. Through the work of the local and government and municipal authorities constituency of the UNFCCC, so of COPs, and the broader efforts of multi-level governance, we're working to ensure that these territorial realities are reflected in global processes, and that local governments are recognized as partners in shaping and delivering climate action. This is also central to our collective goal as UCLG to territorialize loss and damage, so that finance and support can reach communities already experiencing irreversible impacts. Third and final, I've seen that climate justice is built through co-creation, participation, and shared responsibility. This academy has strongly reaffirmed the core axis of the municipal movement. As highlighted in the opening by Pablo, climate action must be rooted in citizen engagement and democracy, in gender equality, in youth as political actors, and in city diplomacy. We've seen that participation must go beyond consultations, and it must enable real influence. That youth are not the future stakeholders, but present leaders. As Nikos from Athens has told us, this means moving from dialogue to implementation, creating spaces like the Youth Climate Assemblies, and providing concrete tools and funding for our young people to lead their own projects. This is how trust is built, by enabling action, not only participation. And gender must equally shape how we design and govern climate policies, while also recognizing intersectional realities. Helena's intervention reminded us that this transition is also cultural. It requires changing narratives, understanding global interdependencies, and building awareness for the structural causes of inequality. And across all examples, one thing is clear. Co-creation is not a method, it's a political choice. I think this brings us to what comes next. As we heard, the outcomes of this academy will fit directly to the local social governance, a collective commitment of the municipal movement to shape a just, inclusive, and sustainable future. This covenant will be brought forward at the UCLG World Congress in Tangier from 20 to 25 June this year as a key moment to consolidate our common position and project into the post-2030 agenda. In that sense, this academy is not an isolated moment. It's a part of a broader process building a shared political vision grounded in justice, rooted in the territories, and carried forward through collective leadership. So if there's one message to carry forward, it's this. The just transition will not happen automatically. It must be deliberatively governed, territorially grounded, and collectively built, and as a shared responsibility and a global common. and local and regional governments stand ready, not only to implement this transition, but to help lead it. Thank you, Eva, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pablo. Okay, I'm sorry that we just had to run, but it's for time constraints. So I think that you conclude in a very nice way. So thank you very much. And then just one last comment is that my colleague Hervé has been sharing a link in the chat in case you want to be informed for future academies, because you need to now be in this list to be receiving information for the future. And we also have an evaluation form where you use the today's training session when we have the policy dialogue and now. And in that evaluation form, you also have a space where you can suggest topics for the next academy. So please do use this so we can improve, but also to respond to the needs of the participants. Okay. So now with this, I will conclude the Training Academy, thanking as well the USLG team, who is the co-organizer of this Training Academy together with CMR and Platforma. And I wish you a wonderful afternoon. And thanks to all of you who have been connecting from far away and with different time zones. So many thanks. And have a nice afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Au revoir, merci.